What's up guys? Today we're taking a look at one of the smallest turbine helicopters on the planet, the Mosquito XET. And besides just being a great helicopter for personal use, I actually think this is the best helicopter to carry around in your private jet. Which, for some reason I can't imagine. I don't think anyone is really doing this out there. But believe it or not, in this video we're going to go into how this might actually be possible. And at risk of confusing my viewers more, I have decided to go back to the original name I made up for this channel. And that's because probably the biggest reason I switched from it is I was worried about people misspelling the last name. But since now I'm better at video editing, I figured out how to be really fancy and put my name down in the corner of the screen. But my name is James Bodie, and you are watching Relative Motion, the channel all about showing you the most interesting places in the world and the best means to get you there. And this is a new channel, so if at any point you like this video, I hope you consider subscribing down below, because that's the best way to help more videos like this come your way. Here we go. The reason I think the XET is one of the best small helicopters out there, and maybe even the best single-seat helicopter in the entire world, is the XET is what I would call the flagship of Mosquito helicopters. And even though it certainly is a small industry, I certainly think Mosquito Helicopters is one of the best names in small kit-built helicopters. The XET is very similar to Mosquito's XE285, which truly is a great little helicopter that I've already done a video on this channel. As far as I know, they're pretty much identical helicopters. The biggest difference between them though is the engine that they run on. The XE285 has a two-stroke piston engine, where the XET is what the T at the end stands for. The XET has a tiny turboshaft engine, and very simply the biggest difference between the two engines is the turbine engine pretty crazily is going to burn twice the fuel. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch to also say the turbine engine would be probably at least twice as reliable. And even burning twice the fuel for a small single-seat helicopter, this will still have, with the maximum fuel, a range of 160 miles, which is why I truly think this is one of the best small personal helicopters you can get. And while it still might seem expensive, as far as helicopters go, the XET has really kept the price down for a turbine helicopter. While you can get one cheaper in kit form, if you're looking for an XET completely put together from the factory, they're going to be around $78,000, and you might be able to pick up a used one for somewhere around $50,000. And like I said, for a turbine helicopter, you're really not going to be able to beat the price, especially if you look at something like the cost per mile, because I would imagine this helicopter costs somewhere around $1.50 per mile, which may seem a little expensive, but actually the national average for all cars in the United States is about 50 cents per mile. So for a turbine powered helicopter only being 3 times as expensive as a normal car, I certainly do think that's a really good price, and I think this helicopter would be truly great for small trips, especially if you live in a large city where traffic can be really hectic. I think the biggest disadvantage, which I've certainly mentioned before on this channel though, about this helicopter, is if you buy this helicopter for personal use, it certainly will only be personal because it only has that one seat. So if you are looking for a little more practical of a helicopter and are trying to keep the price down, I would actually look into a Rotorway 162, which is another video I've done, and I'll link down in the description below. But be aware to keep it around the same price as the XET, you are going back to a piston engine. So to me, that's where the XET really excels. If potentially you are going to be flying over some areas like a large city where it could be more dangerous if your engine quit, to find a safe place to land. Or if you just want a safer helicopter in general, you're pretty much not really going to find a cheaper helicopter with a turbine engine than this. The only one cheaper, and not by a whole lot, is the Helicycle, which is a video I plan on doing in the future, so look out for that one. But the reason I like the XET over that one, if you aren't just solely fixed on price, I do think the XET, having a much more enclosed structure on the aircraft, certainly makes it a little better looking, and especially if you get the option of the doors, which I would always recommend for this helicopter. I really think those doors give this helicopter a great sleek look, almost like the world's smallest attack helicopter. And then along with those doors, I certainly think the other option you really want with this helicopter, especially since this this helicopter burns a pretty high amount of fuel is the additional auxiliary fuel tank that can be installed on the belly of this helicopter. And only with that optional tank will we have the full range of 160 miles. Really, the only unfortunate part about this auxiliary fuel tank is with this specific tank option installed, you are no longer able to install the additional cargo compartment that you can also get on this helicopter. And that's because this extra storage area is in the exact same spot, and so you can only have either the storage compartment or the auxiliary fuel tank. And like I said, especially with the turbine engine on this helicopter, I certainly think that auxiliary fuel tank might be the better option. But every situation is always different, and if you don't plan on taking this very far, but you do want to be able to take some stuff with you, then maybe look into this cargo compartment. But if I actually did own one of these, I think really the most ideal option actually would be if you could put this auxiliary fuel tank on there, and then you would probably have to turn this into an experimental helicopter, which it is pretty close to being anyways. And the reason to do this is then you might be able to fabricate a small couple of cargo baskets to put on the skids of this helicopter. That way you'd have even more carrying capacity and in a much more practical and usable way. But this might end up being a kind of expensive custom option. I just certainly think it would be an interesting idea to explore. Just like what I think is the most interesting use for this helicopter is using this helicopter as a way to reach your final destination in a private jet. This is mostly due to the fact this is one of the shortest, if not the shortest helicopter in the world. And if you do know of a shorter helicopter, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. But because this helicopter is 7 feet or just under it, if your private jet is a passenger aircraft that has been retrofitted, if that passenger model jet also has a cargo configuration, because of this helicopter's small size and especially its height, you might actually be able to sneak it inside the private jet, almost turn your private jet into a flying aircraft carrier. The best example of a passenger jet to use for this would be a Boeing 737, since cargo versions of this jet are fairly popular. The reason for this, if one of these jets is in a cargo configuration, the large cargo door they put on top is just over 7 feet tall, which as far as I know would potentially allow you to sneak this helicopter inside. And while there certainly are larger passenger jets that, as crazy as it sounds, people still use as their private jet, I think most notably something like a 747. If you did have a private jet that big, the cargo doors are much larger on something like that. So you probably could fit a little more variety of helicopters in that one. And like I said earlier, because this helicopter has one seat, it's probably not the most ideal vehicle for a situation like this. And there even are cargo jets with large cargo doors in the main cabin that are smaller than the 737. But like I was saying, pretty much all of those are going to have cargo doors that are under 7 feet. So you're going to be crossing into the point that this helicopter won't fit inside. But there certainly are other options for those jets if you do want to turn them into your personal toy hauler. Something like a CRJ 200 with a large cargo door could still probably fit something like a smart car or a motorcycle. And even crazier, if you still want to fly to your final destination and maybe you want to go with a more James Bond approach.
James, I need you.
So does England.
You could always look into what is called a paramotor, which pretty much like it sounds, is just having a parachute and then attaching a small engine with the propeller on your back. And as crazy as this sounds, with this setup, you are able to remain in sustained flight. And because it's a parachute and the small engine, it can pretty much fit inside any jet, or even a lot of aircraft for that matter. And if this wasn't crazy enough for you, because this helicopter is fairly slim for its long size.
That's what she said!
With the fairly wide fuselage of a large jet like this, you might even be able to fit 2 of these inside if you really worked at it. Or if you really wanted to turn this into a toy hauler, you could probably fit this helicopter, and like I was saying earlier, a motorcycle, and even a smart car, if you want to have a bunch of different options where you arrive. Because to me, the coolest idea of this whole thing is with a large jet like a 737, when they are in a private jet configuration, they're getting to the point they're pretty much like having a motorhome or a house inside. It has a bedroom, dining room, room, bathrooms with showers, living areas, an office, and even more. I certainly think you could easily live in something like this. And having an auxiliary power unit, which I've talked about on this channel before, but I won't fully go into here. Just know it's a cheap way to keep the aircraft running while it's on the ground, versus running its large engines to supply power to the aircraft, which of course are also much louder and much more powerful. Just be aware, the only problem you can sometimes run into is even these auxiliary power units, because they are jet engines, can be pretty loud, and you might run into issues trying to run it all the time because of this noise pollution it gives off. So this private jet would pretty much have anything you could ever want at your fingertips wherever you're going, without having to rely on pretty much anything at your final destination. Really, the only thing you need help with is the fact you would need a special vehicle to pull these vehicles out of this jet's main cargo door. But the other nice part of this helicopter having that turbine engine is putting it inside this private jet like this. It's always going to run on the same exact fuel as the private jet. So if you land in an airport with fuel, if they're able to fuel your jet, they'll also be able to fuel your helicopter. And even if you landed at some remote destination, which would probably be pretty hard with a large jet like this, but let's say hypothetically you did, if you wanted to refuel this helicopter, you might even be able to pull some fuel out of the fuel tanks on this jet. And with the incredibly large fuel tanks on a large jet like this, it would barely notice a measly 20 gallons, which is the absolute maximum this helicopter could hold. And this fuel is probably even the last reason that, like I was talking about earlier in this video, as it is even another advantage to using a turbine engine in your personal helicopter, is because it does run on jet fuel. It is super easy to find fuel for this helicopter at most airports. And I'm really saying this compared to that XE285 that I mentioned at the beginning of this video with the two-stroke engine, because I would certainly say two-stroke fuel is a lot harder to find at most airports. Well, you made it to the end of this video, so I certainly hope you think the Mosquito XET is a super cool helicopter. And like I said, if you want to see any of those videos about the other helicopters I mentioned in this video, like the XE285 and other ones, check out the description below. And I can't thank you enough for how many of you guys are subscribing. It really is blowing my mind how quickly this channel is growing. And because of this, I'm planning on doing a live stream at 1,000 subscribers. So if you'd like to hang out with me and ask some questions, I really hope you look out for that video and stop by if you have the time. And until next time, I'm James Bodie, and you've been watching Relative Motion.